enters from there, and the surplus would go here. And this is the canal door. And there we have the roller that will start to rotate. This is the filly valve mill. We are going to take a sack of grain to grind it. Shall I pour it all out, Andres? Yes. Well, this is the machinery inside of the filly valve mill. The first thing we have is a container to put the grain in. The hopper. The grain falls into this box, which is called canal. For the grain to fall, it needs a cogwheel. The drum. There we see how the grain falls. If it doesn't touch, not a grain falls. Here inside are the stones. This is the box, and inside are the stones. If we look out this small wooden window, we can see the stone on top. That is the only one that goes all around. The one below is still. This is the one we would see spinning. If we look out of this hole that we have here, we would see the roller. The roller stands still. When Andres opens the water, that roller will turn. And the flour, once it is milled, comes out here and falls into this container, the sifter. We would only have this tool left, that this is what is used to lift the stones when they are very worn and need to be chopped again with this. He has a hole on each side, and operating with this crank, we lift it up and we bring it here. We turn it over, it's chopped, and then we put it back in place. But now we're going to mill. We do not need this on the outside. And that water may be able to move the stones. These stones that we have here are built just in case a very big flood comes, and a log cannot hit the mill. It does not take it away. We have the water coming in. This is where the overflow would go to the canal. And this is the door of the canal. We come this way, and there we see the roller, which is the one that will start to spin. This is the channel that is getting narrower and narrower for the water to gain more force. There we see how the roller has already stopped because it has dropped the chapaza. Do you see that board over there? Right now it has been lifted by Andres. That one is the chapaza. Andres has lifted it up and lowered it again. At the moment he lifts it, the roller spins around. This hole where we are is called ranero, the overflow that returns to the river again. He is going to lift up the chapaza that prevents the water from hitting the roller. He lifts it up and leaves it tied, and we started to hear the sound of the stones spinning. Right now we are milling mixed wheat with a little bit of rye, and we just want to break it a little for the cattle. If we wanted to make flour, we would have to select the grain first, the grain of wheat, and put the stones together a lot more so that it is milled, to make it thin, very thin. By lifting the stone, it separates further, makes less force to the grain, and it mills more. The flour is good now. For the cattle, it is phenomenal. Depending on the need of the mill, more or less water is given and is regulated with this wood that we have here in front of the entrance. This is the wood of the gate. As there is too much water, it is only going to be left a little inclined, because too much would enter. Now with this flour, the more water it has, the less it costs. If we want a little thinner, we would lower it. We would lower it. We can already see how the mill has stopped a little. It goes slower because it loses strength. It is more difficult to mill, although we still have a lot of water power. This mill, with this flow rate, is capable of milling 3 sacks in an hour. So we could be talking about 150 kilos, more or less, in an hour. There is also a regulator in the trough, so that more or less amount of grain falls, which is that wire. After all, they are regulators so that the stones do not fill with grain. This is the typical sound of the tocador, the typical sound of the mill, the drum, the typical sound of the mill. It is necessary, because if it did not tap, you would not see a grain. Immediately does not fall a single grain. Andres is peering into the hopper because it seems that the grain has run out. Once it is finished, the mill has to be stopped because it is useless for the stones to be turning on their own. They would be worn out and would have to be chopped. That requires some work. We have the flour milled. The job is done. Now, in a short time, at the moment, it will be finished. To stop the mill, it will be necessary to lower the chapaza again, to remove the water, and it will stop by itself. Look, now we see how the chapaza has fallen, which prevents the water from hitting directly into the roller. It is simply left with the centrifugal force of the stones themselves. He will just stop milling. It will stop working. Now we're going to get ready to lower the stones from above, so that the friction prevents it from running, prevents it from spinning. This has to stop right now. Now I'm going to put the floodgate in place to prevent the water from hitting the roller and try to mill. Now we see that more is coming out. Because of the surplus, it can no longer come this way. It leaves through the surplus. Now the shovel to collect the flour. Now that the work is already done, collecting the flour. We are collecting the flour that we have just milled to take it home and throw it to the chickens, who have a good appetite for it. The chickens or the pigs? The piglets, yes. This one is good to use. This one is good, yes. It is very well milled. We throw this to the chickens. You'll see what sort of eggs they lay. Let's put the rope on it, because in the path of the mill is worth more with the ropes than the wheat. We have to tie the sack, because if it comes untied, we have done nothing. In the past, people used to come with their caps to mill with their sacks on top. Of course, that is why it had to be very well tied. If it was badly tied, the wheat would still fall out. Come on, let's go.